Welcome back to Pink Turtle Soaps. Today I'm making a coconut lime verbena soap. I did have to Google how to pronounce that word because I always thought it was verbena, but apparently it's verbena. It's a very tropical, fruity, summery fragrance. It's definitely a perfect fragrance for bringing on the warmer weather. It's one of those scents that makes me want to go to the beach, but unfortunately I live about 8 to 10 hours from the nearest beach, so the next best thing is going to have to be to smell the soap. So of course I just talked right through that first step, but all I did was I added my live water to my oils, and then I'm going to use my stick blender to blend them together. Alrighty, so everything is nice and incorporated. There are no floating oils sitting on top. Everything is nice and blended, so it's nice and creamy. Alright, so the next step is to pour off this batch into 4 smaller containers. My daughter is also out in the hallway playing, so you'll probably hear her screaming at some point. So I'm not going to measure these off perfectly. I always just eyeball them. Alright, so I'm done with that large container. Everything has been poured into these smaller containers. And I'm going to only work with one at a time, so I'm going to move the other 3 out of the way. So for this first color here, I'm using High Society Green. This is going to be the very first layer, or the bottom layer of the soap. Alright, so I'm going to take my stick blender and mix this in really quick. So I'm just going to scrape down the side, make sure there's no colorant stuck, make sure that it's all nice and incorporated. So the next step is to pour the fragrance oil into this container. I'm going to mix that up by hand as well. And then I will grab our mold and show you the next step. Alright, so we have the mold. And I went ahead and added the fragrance oil. I did use the stick blender for just a second. When you're doing layers, it usually works out best if your soap thickens a little faster than you would normally like for it to. You can see how it's, maybe you can see, it's thicker than I typically want my soap, but because I need it to be thick enough to support the next layer, using the stick blender really helps with that. The next color I'm using is New Leaf Green, and this color has quickly become one of my favorites. It's the perfect light green, in my opinion anyway. Brought our mold back over, and that bottom layer is pretty firm. I'm still going to use the spatula here to help break the fall, but it should be just fine. And this next layer is just going to sit right on top. Again, I'm just going to scrape out this container, and then I'm going to do my best to flatten that out. It's a little more thin than that last layer, so I should be able to get it pretty level. So for this third layer, I'm adding some titanium dioxide, and that's going to give us a really pretty white. Alright, so here we have our beautiful white. I'm going to grab our mold, and you know the system here now. So the next color is going to be mocha brown, and I'm going to go ahead and just speed through the next 2 layers for you guys. Alright, so the final step is to add our shredded soap that's supposed to look like shredded coconut. I took some uncolored, unscented cold processed soap that I had, and that's what it looks like naturally, so I thought it would look just like coconut. So I'm going to add some of this to the very top, especially right now while it's still sticky enough to grab onto it. I'm going to place this along the top, and then I'm going to put a glove on and just gently press those down to make sure that they all stick nice and well. I'm adding a lot because I know that some of these are going to fall off when I go to cut the soap. So I want to add more now to compensate for what we might lose later on. So we are finished with this soap, and like I said, some of these are going to move. Not all of them are attached, but that's going to be okay. I'm going to spray it down with rubbing alcohol to help prevent soda ash. And I can't decide if I want to add glitter or not. Nah, I think I'm going to leave it alone. I think that adding glitter may make this look not as realistic as I want it to, so I'm just going to leave it alone. I'm going to let this sit for about 24 hours. I'm going to come back and check it, and if it has set up enough, we will cut it up and check out the inside.